Hello. In this video, I'm going to be starting the modeling process of the St. Andrews Beach House in Revit. I chose this building not just because it's a pretty cool one, but also because it's a great example to show a bunch of new Revit commands as well as ones shown in the previous video covering the basics of Revit. Now, before we start, I actually collected a bunch of images of my building. If you're doing a different building, I would recommend collecting reference images as well as the floor plans and sections. These are going to help us model and eyeball parts of the building that we normally can't see within the floor plans and sections. So we're going to go back to Revit, and to start our project, I'm going to hit New. And I don't think I'm going to use the template for this one at all. So I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to set my units as metric because this building was designed in New Zealand, so the floor plans and everything are going to be scaled to a metric system. So once we've loaded in, we're going to go to the Manage tab on the top, and we're going to go to the Project Units. And for things like length and distance, I'm going to change it to meters instead of centimeters so that we're not typing really big numbers every time we're trying to make a certain length. Once we've done that, after hitting OK, we need to insert our base images, specifically the floor plan. So we're going to go to the Insert tab on the top ribbon, and I'm going to go to Import Image. Then I'm going to locate my floor plan file on my computer. If you were in a design studio, maybe you have a drawing of a floor plan that you want to draw over, it would serve the same purpose. And I found my image right here, so I'm going to click Open. And our image is really big, so I'm going to zoom way out and click to place it. And we have a graphic scale down here, which is really going to help us when it comes to scaling the image, which is the next thing we have to do. I'm also assuming that these units are in metric. It most likely is. I'm going to take a model line, and I'm going to draw from the 0 mark to the 1 meter mark, centering on the middle of the pixels. So we're going to use this 1 meter mark to scale our entire image. So this is what 1 meter is on the image. So we need to start another model line from the 0 point, but we're going to do it a little bit downwards. And we're going to make this an actual meter to scale. So what is 2.3 meters on the image should actually be 1 meter. So we're going to use this to scale. We're going to select our image, go to the Scale command or tool on the top toolbar. And we're going to select our base reference point, which is at 0. Then we're going to select the end of our top line, which is 2.3 meters. And we're going to drag this down to the length of our actual 1 meter line that's below with a reference line, as you can see, and click to enter. And now 1 meter is actually 1 meter. Now our image is to scale, so we can actually use it accurately. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these model lines because we don't need them anymore. And let's head back to the actual floor plan. I'm going to go to the Architecture tab and create a floor just for the base or foundation of our entire building. I'm going to use a circle, and I'm going to place it directly in the middle of the floor plan. I'm going to use the pixels to align it perfectly. And we're going to drag it out to the bounds of the building. I'm going to go up here because we can actually see where the foundation should be. And I'm actually going to push it just a little bit past these posts because I see in the reference images that these posts have a little bit of the foundation poking out beyond. Then I'm going to click the check mark to finish our foundation. Let's go to the 3D view to check it out. There is our foundation. And now we can move on to the topography for our site. Now we're going to do the topography. So to start, we're going to go back to level 1, and we're going to take some model lines, and we're going to make the bounds of our entire site. Maybe if you're going to make a physical model, you might have something specific, but I'm just going to make this a certain size that feels right. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what topography lines are, I'm going to give a quick explanation. Essentially, it's these lines, and they indicate a change in elevation, each line. Each line is usually a specific unit, maybe like a meter or 5 meters, maybe 10 meters. Could be more, it depends on the scale of your topography map. If the lines are close together, it's steep, and if they're far apart, then it's a more flat area. This building doesn't have a site plan that has topography lines. Maybe in your case, you might have some from a site visit or from a LiDAR scan, but I'm just gonna eyeball mine based off this image and try to get it right. I'm just gonna take model lines and eyeball where I think these topography lines would be. Maybe you have topography lines from a site plan or something, you could trace over it. But I'm just keeping in mind, where there's a steeper area in the ground and where they're flatter. Typically, you'd want these to be really accurate, but I don't have anything to follow after, so I'm just eyeballing it. But in most cases, you'd want highly accurate topography, both in the actual location and curvature of them, as well as knowing the height difference between each line. If you were doing this in an architectural studio, you could even sign up for free access to a LiDAR service if they have your site on it. Or perhaps you could call the town of where your site is and they might have a survey of the location as well. For the south side of the site, I am adding a lot more lines because it's definitely steeper on this side of the site. And I'm making sure that every line terminates at the edge of the boundaries. Additionally, actual topography would probably curve a lot smoother than this. Now to make the actual massing of the topography, we're going to go to Massing in Site as a tab on the top, and the drop down of TopoSolid, and we're going to create from sketch. Now it's asking us to create a boundary for our topography mass, so we're going to take the rectangle drawing tool and just cover the entire site using our boundaries. There's an error, and this is because the topography is covering our foundation. They're at the same elevation. So with the topography selected, we're going to go to its properties on the left side, and we're going to change the base heights. We're going to offset it downwards by the height of the topography. I'll put it down by -0.1. And that fixes the error. And that gives us just a little bit of space for our foundation to poke out of the topography. Now, before we add the points that will actually give the topography its heights, we need to make this thicker so that it can actually go downwards with the dips. So I'm going to select the topography and hit Edit Type in the properties. Then I'll hit Edit on the structure area. You can see the default thickness. And we're going to select this thickness and we're going to make it something thicker. I'm going to set it to 6 meters to make it a really big, chunky topography. This will give us space to carve down into it, which we didn't have before. With this selected, we're going to go to the level 1 viewport and we're going to set the view style to wireframe so we can clearly see our lines as we're doing this. Now we're going to click Modify Sub-Elements because we're modifying the TopoSolid right now. And we're going to click Add Point. By default, you might have this long surface button turned on, but you should turn it to absolute instead so that it's not changing the elevation as we're drawing it. And because we already lowered the elevation a little bit because of the foundation, I'm going to set the elevation of these points to -0.1. And now we are just going to place by clicking a bunch of dots along the lines that we already drew for the topography. And make sure to also click the ends where they meet the boundaries. Because we're placing these points at the same elevation as the topography, everything beyond these lines inward is going to stay the initial height, which is what we want for the path. Now for this northern area, we need the topography to start sloping downwards, so we're going to change the elevation of our points, and I think I'm going to make each topography line change by 0.3 meters, so this now needs to be -0.4 meters. And once I've entered that, I can start placing these points along the lines. Remember to also place them at the point where the topography lines intersect with the edges. Now that you know the process, I'm just going to speed the rest of these southern ones up, and you'll start to see the topography will actually change the geometry. Let's check out how that looks. And you can see that our site is actually sloping downwards now. Now that we're done with the northern part of the site, we can do the southern side. So we're going to select the topography, go back to level 1, and modify sub-elements. We're going to add more points. And this time we need to go upwards. So our base elevation is -0.1, so we need to go to 0.2. This is why if you already have topography lines on an image, you might not necessarily need to make these model lines. You can simply just tap over the lines on your image. If the topography sticks out like that, we could fix that later if we want to. And now we are going to do the rest of them. I'm going to speed it up, but we are increasing every topography line by 0.3. I also fixed the little issue up there just by moving one of the points on that layer. Once we've done that, we can go to the 3D view to verify how it looks. And we can see that our site has a nice slope like the reference images with a big flat area in the middle for the house and the pathways. Now we're going to do the pathway on top of our topography. So we're going to select our massing and we're going to hit subdivide in the top right corner. And we can now draw our pathway. This is going to be applied onto the topography. So I'm going to take a circle and I'm going to do this from the middle of the building just to make the pathway that goes around the building. So first I'll snap it to the outer edges of the foundation and I'm going to offset it by a certain thickness. I'm going to use 1.5. Then I'll use the arc curve tool to make a winding path coming from the building out to the edge of the site. Once I've done one side of the pathway, I'm going to do this little starting curve, and then I'm just going to use the offset tool again with the same thickness as the center path around the house. And I'll finish this little corner here. Make sure to cap it off because it is similar to an extrusion and you need to connect the edges. And then we need to get rid of this part of the circle in front of the pathway. So we're going to do that by using the trim tool. Once we're done with that, we're going to hit the check mark to finish it. And it gives us a little error, though I'm not really sure why, because the pathway is modeled and it looks good. The only thing is that our pathway is quite thick. So we're going to select it and we're going to go to the subdivide height in its properties. And we're going to make this something a little thinner, like 0.1 or maybe 0.05. That looks much thinner. Now that our topography and pathway is done, there's only a couple little tips that I just want to show you. One is that we can select our background image and come up here and hit the pin button, which will allow our image to not be selected or moved on accident. Super useful. Another thing is that we're going to select one of our model lines from our topography guidelines, and we're going to right click it, and we're going to go down to select all instances, and we're going to select an entire project. This selects all the model lines, even the ones you can't see. And I'm going to deselect this middle one that I made just because I want to know where the center of the building is. And the rest of them, you could totally hide them, but I'm going to delete them because I don't need them anymore. And we are left with just our topography and the foundation. I'm also going to show you how we can change the material of our topography. I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to hit Edit Type. And in the structure, I'm going to hit Edit. And the structure right here under Material, we can hit this little hidden drop-down menu. And here we can set a material. And because we used no template for this file, there's actually no materials pre-made that would work for this. So we're going to select Create New Material down here in the bottom left corner. And I'm going to go to Identity. And I'm going to name this material something like dirt, grass, or earth. I'm going to go back to the Appearance tab and click on the color. And I'm just going to give it a muted green type color. Although you could hit Image instead of Color and import an image as a texture. I'm going to apply and hit OK. Then I'll hit OK again. Apply everything. And now we have a green grassy color for our topography. Following this video is going to be a guide on the basic structure of this building, showcasing a couple new tools. I also wanted to bring up that on this channel there are walkthroughs for Photoshop and Blender visualization of this very same building if you want to expand your skill set. Thanks.